My name is Elena Vance. I'm 28 years old, and tonight my twin sister Camille is having a medical school graduation party at the Grand Bellamy Hotel. My mother texted me 6 hours ago. This is Camille's night. Do not show up and embarrass this family. What my mother doesn't know is that I'm already standing in the doorway of the ballroom with an envelope in my purse that will end her carefully constructed world. 3 years ago, my mother called me sobbing. Your father's cancer is back. They found a mass on his latest scan. The treatment isn't covered by insurance. We need $35,000 up front or they won't even start. I was 6 months into my own medical degree, living in a studio apartment that smelled like damp drywall, eating oatmeal for dinner 3 nights a week. My father, Joseph Vance, had beaten colon cancer once before. He was the reason I wanted to become an oncologist. The thought of losing him while I was still learning how to save people like him cracked something open inside me. I emptied my entire savings, $5,000 from years of tutoring high school students and working summers at a veterinary clinic. Then I walked into a private lender and took out a $30,000 loan at 11% interest. I sent my mother every dollar within 48 hours. She called me a hero. She said I'd saved my father's life. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? 9 months later, Camille had her dream destination wedding in Santorini. White bougainvillea, a cliffside ceremony, a 5-piece string quartet. And I stood there in a department store dress, smiling for photos, still paying $412 a month on a loan that was supposed to have gone into my father's veins. Tonight, even though I wasn't invited, I still brought a gift. When the MC reads my card out loud in front of 200 guests, including Camille's wealthy new in-laws, the entire room will go dead silent. And my mother will discover that the daughter she told to stay home has been quietly building a case against her for 3 years. Before I tell you what happens tonight, let me take you back to where this all started. If you've ever been betrayed by the one person who is supposed to protect you, if you've ever handed over everything you had because you trusted the wrong voice, type "trust broken" in the comments right now. I want you to know you're not watching this alone. October 14th, 2022, Tuesday afternoon. I was in the anatomy lab at Richmond Medical College, surrounded by flashcards I'd been staring at for 16 hours straight. My phone buzzed.
Mom.
Her voice was wet and shattered. Elena, I didn't want to tell you like this. Dad's oncologist called. The cancer's back.
They saw something on his follow-up CT.
They want to start an experimental immunotherapy protocol immediately, but the insurance company denied it. They're calling it investigational. We owe $35,000 before they'll even schedule the first infusion. I slid down the wall and sat on the cold linoleum floor. My father had been in remission for 4 years. He was healthy, swimming laps again, talking about retiring to a cabin in the mountains. Asked to see the denial letter. Mom emailed it while we were still on the phone. A PDF on what looked like official letterhead from the oncology group, signed by a Dr. Marcus Webb. The language matched what I was learning in my own medical courses. Experimental classification. Patient financial responsibility. $34,800. I didn't call my father. He hated discussing his first cancer battle. He'd always say, "Your mother handles the medical stuff." I'd just show up and get poked. And I was terrified that if I called him directly, I'd hear fear in his voice and I'd fall apart. So I let my mother remain the gatekeeper. That was the decision I'd replay 1,000 times. I called Camille. She cried and said she had $600 in her account and Tyler, her fiancé, was looking into charity programs, but there was nothing. Camille lived in a luxury apartment that Tyler's parents subsidized. I lived in a converted living room with 2 roommates and a hot plate. I told her I'd handle it. That night, I opened my savings account. $5,040. Birthdays, holidays, years of tutoring teenagers in chemistry. Gone in one transfer at 2 in the morning. I still needed $30,000 more. I found a lender called Quick Fund that promised approvals within 24 hours for medical emergencies. The loan officer spoke in a monotone. $30,000 at 11% APR, 6-year term, for $112 a month. Total repayment, just under $44,000. I signed. The money hit my account on October 17th. I transferred every cent to my mother by noon. She called me crying again and said, "You saved your father's life. I'll never forget this." I believed her because I was 25 years old, drowning in medical school, and desperate to believe my father was going to live. What followed was the slow, grinding erosion of my own life. I took a phlebotomy job drawing blood from midnight to 6 a.m., then raced to morning lectures. I tutored pre-med students between shifts. I donated plasma twice a week, $50 a pop, until my iron levels dropped so low I fainted during a practical exam and woke up on the floor with my supervisor calling my name. I'd lost 12 pounds. My grades slipped from top quartile to barely passing. Meanwhile, Camille posted photos from bridal fittings and cake tastings. She told me Tyler's parents were covering the venue, and Mom was miraculously covering everything else: the dress, the florist, the photographer. I thought, maybe Mom had savings I didn't know about. Maybe Dad's disability payments helped. I didn't ask. I was too exhausted to ask. The wedding was in July 2023, on a whitewashed terrace overlooking the Aegean Sea. I flew to Santorini wearing a clearance rack dress and shoes that pinched my toes, and I watched my mother clink champagne glasses with Tyler's father, a real estate developer worth millions. At the reception, one of my aunts leaned over and said, "Your mother told me she paid for nearly everything except the venue. So generous." Something cold settled in my stomach. I found a quiet corner and pulled up my bank app. The loan payment had just auto-drafted. $412. I was still paying for my father's treatment while my mother was handing out wedding florals like party favors. That night, I didn't sleep. I started searching. The discovery came in fragments over the next 6 months. During a weekend visit home, my father mentioned offhand that he hadn't seen an oncologist in over a year, just annual physicals with his primary care doctor. Clean scans every time. I asked him about the experimental treatment, and he looked at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. What treatment? I haven't had a single infusion since my first remission. I've been fine. That was the moment the floor dropped out. I logged into his insurance portal late that night. In 2022, the year of my supposed sacrifice, his total medical costs were a routine colonoscopy and 2 follow-up visits. Total out-of-pocket, $180. No immunotherapy, no Dr. Marcus Webb, no $35,000 bill. The denial letter was a fabrication. I started digging deeper. I found my mother's personal bank account statements in an unlocked file cabinet. October 2022. The same week I sent her $35,000, she made a $10,000 payment to a bridal boutique. November 2022, $8,000 to a florist. December, $5,000 to a photographer. By the time Camille's wedding arrived in July, my mother had spent nearly every dollar I'd borrowed. Not on my father, not on cancer, but on calla lilies and champagne, and a string quartet on a Greek cliffside. I didn't confront her. Confronting her privately would have given her time to spin the story, to gaslight me, to make herself the victim. I knew my mother. What she valued more than anything was her image, the way she looked to her wealthy new in-laws, to her friends, to the world. So I decided to take that from her the same way she'd taken everything from me, publicly, thoroughly, and with documentation. I built a binder. 112 pages. The fake denial letter, my loan documents, my savings transfer receipts, the timeline mapped against every single wedding expense, a sworn statement from my father's actual oncologist confirming he'd been in remission the entire time. I met with a legal aid attorney who told me that while criminal charges would be difficult, public exposure was its own form of justice. So I waited. Camille finished medical school this spring. My mother announced she was throwing a graduation celebration, but only for Camille. I got a text. "This is Camille's night. Don't show up and embarrass this family." She'd erased me so completely that she genuinely believed I'd stay quiet forever. I looked at my binder, and I smiled.
Perfect.
So here's my question to you. If you found out your own mother faked your father's cancer to steal $35,000 from you, if you discovered she funded your sibling's dream while you worked yourself sick, would you confront her quietly, Or would you expose her in front of everyone she was desperate to impress? Comment private or public right now, because I'm about to walk into that ballroom. The Grand Bellamy Hotel shimmered under crystal chandeliers. 200 guests mingled in evening wear. I saw Camille in a cream silk gown, radiant and oblivious. I saw my mother near the head table, laughing with Tyler's parents, her champagne glass catching the light. I saw my father standing near the bar, proud and unsuspecting. And I saw the gift table on the small stage, a microphone poised beside it. The MC, a polished young man named Derek, announced the tradition. Every card would be read aloud. It was a Vance family custom my mother had once described as transparency and gratitude. I placed my envelope, thick, heavy, a 9x12 manila folder, directly in the center of a table. Then I found a seat at the back with cousins I barely knew, and I waited. Derek picked up my envelope third. He felt the weight. He joked, "This one's substantial."
The room laughed.
He opened it. His smile faded as he pulled out the binder and the card. He began reading aloud. "Dear Camille, congratulations on your degree. I wanted to give you something meaningful to mark this moment. Enclosed you will find the complete accounting of how your wedding was funded." My mother's chair scraped loudly against the floor. She stood up, her face bone white. Derek hesitated, but Tyler's mother, Constance, waved him on. The tradition was the tradition. He read each line like a verdict, the bank statements, the $35,000 total, the loan I was still repaying, the fake denial letter, my father's real medical records showing no cancer at all. The room fell into a silence, so deep I could hear the ice shifting in someone's glass. My father stood frozen, his jaw slack. Camille's face crumpled with confusion and horror. Tyler's hand slowly let go of hers. My mother began moving toward the stage, her voice high and panicked. "This is a misunderstanding. Stop reading." But Derek had already reached the final document, the timeline matching each of my transfers to each wedding expense, week by week, dollar by dollar. He held up the check I'd included for the remaining loan balance, made out to Camille, with the memo line, "Final payment, your wedding." And then I rose from my seat, walked to the stage, and took the microphone. My voice was steady. "I didn't come here to ruin your night, Camille. I came to return a gift. I love you. You didn't know. But our mother knew. She let me work 3 jobs. She let me lose my health. She let me believe I was saving our father's life, while she booked your florist and your photographer." I looked directly at my mother, whose face had collapsed into something unrecognizable. "You didn't think I'd find out. You didn't think I'd wait. But I did. And now 200 people know exactly who you are." I set the microphone down, walked past the frozen guests, and pushed through the ballroom doors into the cool night air. Behind me, the room erupted. I didn't look back. What happened after? The divorce, the ruined reputation, the slow, painful rebuilding with my father and sister is a longer story. But in that moment, standing on the sidewalk under a clear February sky, I felt something I hadn't felt in 3 years: freedom. No more $412 monthly reminders of a lie. No more weight of a secret I'd been carrying alone. Just the truth, finally out loud, in front of everyone who needed to hear it. If you've ever had to set a boundary with someone who is supposed to love you, if you've ever had to choose between silence and your own survival, drop a comment and tell me your story. I read every single one. And if you want more stories like this, hit subscribe, because Midnight Drama Stories is just getting started. I'm Elena Vance, and I'm finally free.